I wanted to ask you, because you said you were bootstrapping for a bit. When was the time that you guys started thinking about the VC funding?
So we had like three rounds. First was angel round, the second was VC, and then the third PE.
Mhm.
So the VC round was actually made where we from like I remember those early discussions with the angel, kind of very small. We were very small. We had a lot of like there was a lot of interest about the company, around the company in Poland, and we were meeting, a couple of like VCs, and when they were asking us what are our plans, when we plan to kind of go to the US, move to the Silicon Valley. So we were like, come on, guys, we're not really interested in that. We are kind of lazy. We think that Poland is giving us a lot of like enough potential to build like significant business, right? And a lot of those fans, those VCs were thinking we are just not ambitious enough,
Oh,
which was
really?
completely new. Yeah, yeah. These were the comments, but because we really believed that our space, and I think this is a challenge for a lot of like Polish uh, software companies. Polish market is just big enough to build like quite nice mid-size company, right? So it's hard, like paradoxically, it's hard to scale from a country like Poland with like 40 million population. It's harder to scale than to scale for a company from Estonia, right? Because they need to think like global from the start. For us, you can build quite nice business, keep full ownership, keep full control, right? And have like, I don't know, 20 million euro ARR, right?
Mm.
But it really, after 5 years, it became clear. It became very clear that there is like huge potential in Europe. We started to slowly play that game, and then we said, okay, I mean, let's take. It's like, the moment we had an angel, you think you become aware that at some stage you will have to sell that business, right? So there will be an end game, right? So then we uh, made this decision about international go to market, and that was the moment we realized, okay, so we will have like less control in the business than we thought, but the company will be bigger, and of course we are the risking. So that was like the second very important, say, uh, um, you know this the point in the history of the business. But then honestly, we did that funding, extremely, we used that funding extremely unreasonably, right? So we kind of, we had a very strange, I mean strange, we made some kind of a bet with the VC fund. uh, and I'm sharing this just to make this podcast more interesting, because maybe other entrepreneurs are facing similar kind of stories. So we made a kind of a bet where with the investor that we will kind of achieve the next year after the investment, we will achieve 100% growth, right? And we basically used all that money to achieve that growth, which we achieved that growth, right? Which kind of resulted in some kind of equity kind of switches, but such an aggressive really way of moving on after 1 year resulted in like great churn, because we were not selecting customers. We went very strongly beyond our ICP, right? And we did a lot of like stupid things, which then, after 1 year, we woke up with like huge cash flow problem, right? And then and from 100% of growth, the next year we were growing 20%. And that took us probably another 2 years to get back from that trouble, right? So
Wow.
That is so great to hear that story, because I think
Well,
the VC world, from my understanding, is very much push growth, 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 growth. So it's very fascinating to hear the real world scenario of, okay, you use that money, you just push for growth, sell, but they're not the right ICP, and therefore actually long run you pay for that, and it wasn't the same figures in the following year.
yeah, it's very interesting. And also on the LinkedIn or anywhere on social media, you will probably always see the story, oh, our growth was 100%. You don't hear the story, what actually happens after, how well it was executed. So that's really, really interesting and thanks for sharing this. I wanted to ask you, because obviously you got money from VC, you got money from PE. I wondered, like, which experience do you think taught you more?
Well, I think each was like significant experience. But I think, of course, from my like really entrepreneur sort of founder perspective, of course, PE coming in and taking, basically buying, 100% of the company, and then I became like a shareholder of 10% after 2 years. After 2 years, I stopped being a CEO in my own company. We're hiring a CEO, and and a really complete like redesign of life was of course like much more sort of, that was much more significant and had much more impact on my really thinking and how my really like daily life looks like. So
And how did it work for you in terms of how did it feel to be sort of replaced by a different CEO in your own company? How did that sort of play out?
So I was like very much relieved because and I will tell you why. I think my character, my way of running business, and my taking decisions. I think I personally maybe was not able to manage that situation really well. I think private equities require more kind of playbook like sort of behaviors, management, decision making, and so on. Right? I'm kind of crazy guy where I was sort of a little bit lost with the whole kind of infrastructure that appeared with the private equities. And of course, I fully understand that's something it's super necessary if you think of scaling the company from 20 to 50 or 100 million, right? That you basically need to build that way. So I took the company to 20 million ARR in like super in a bit different kind of management mode than you take the company from 20 to 100. So I as I said, I felt like super happy that there is a professional that will be able to manage the infrastructure of private equities, reporting, operating partners, C-level, a bunch of C-level people hired to the business and so on, right? So I feel basically I'm not this kind of I feel I'm not this kind of guy, right? To run this kind of I prefer working in a bit different environment.